Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I'm ABP Live. You're watching ABP Live Podcast, and joining me today in conversation is Aparna Sanyal. She has written this brand new book, Instruments of Torture. Today is 21st of February when we are recording this, and which happens to be the launch of this book as well.
Yes,
it's by HarperCollins, and congratulations on the new book.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me here, Abhi.
Same. The feelings are really mutual because I really enjoyed reading a brief of this book, and this sounds very interesting to me. It's although a fiction, not a non-fiction, but I would love to know what exactly is the book all about for a person who has never heard about this book or never read. Of course, a majority of them have not read because आज ही release हो रही है.
हाँ जी. So Instruments of Torture actually takes after its name.
Okay.
It is named after medieval torture instruments.
Okay.
और हर एक कहानी इस किताब की is named after one particular torture instrument.
Okay.
And it is the modern psychological equivalent of that instrument. So, for example, the first one in the book is called the rack.
Okay.
So, as you know, the rack was an old medieval instrument where they used to stretch out people. They used to pull them by the legs and the hands, and that was the form of torture. They used to put them over a wheel, and उनके हाथ और पैर दोनों साइड से खींचते थे to elongate them. And my story is actually about a boy who's given growth hormones and the psychological effects that the growth hormone has on him. So every story in the book, there are 8 stories in the book, every story is named after a particular instrument of torture.
Okay.
And every story is more twisted than the next. So if you like your deep, dark kind of content, then this is what you're looking for.
How dark does it go?
Very dark. I mean unfettered and dark.
Okay, because I know the moment I opened the book, it says a trigger warning. A lot of people can be triggered through these things.
Absolutely.
Does it also have a sexual connotation to it? Because
100%.
since we talk about torture, there is an angle to that as well.
Yes.
What exactly is
So although I haven't explored like BDSM, but I have explored certain fetishes, certain deviances that are known as deviances but are actually normal to certain sections of society. I have explored them in the book.
Okay.
I don't write very raunchy per se, so but there is a lot of explicit content, not to the extent of explicit physically, but explicit in terms of where it is on the spectrum of normality. So there is a lot of that in the book as well.
It is not typically an erotica, right? It is not.
No, it would not come under erotica at all.
Okay. What kind of research went into it? Like, tell me the procedure. When you thought of writing this book, क्या आया? मतलब ऐसी random किसी evening में thought आया कि चलो मैं ऐसा लिखती हूँ, या बहुत सारी लंबी स्टोरी है? मेरी
हस्बैंड की कहानी ये है कि एक दिन मैं बेलन लेकर के जब उनको मारने गई तब उन्होंने बोला कि बेबी अब इसके just write a book about it. But the true story is that many years ago I actually visited a physical exhibition of instruments of torture. And when I was passing through it and I was seeing all of these things, and to see them physically manifested, Abir, is very scary because it makes you realize that actually इस चीज़ से किसी आदमी या औरत को physical pain हो रहा था, and that really made me think. And coming from where I do, I'm neurodivergent myself, in the sense that I've had major depressive disorder my whole life. So for me, coming from a place of being misunderstood because of that and having to suffer a lot of mental trauma in the past because of my because of my condition, I realized that there is not enough said about conditions or things which are so-called taboo. And in a way, they are used against the people who suffer with them or people who live with them, like torture. So people who are different or divergent are tortured. Only that torture may be psychological. आपको वो सामने दिखेगा नहीं, लेकिन वो definitely है. तो उस चीज़ से मैंने जब सोचना चालू किया तो ये characters मुझे बहुत clearly समझ में आए कि मुझे ये, और मुझे जो instruments बहुत ही डरावने लगे, उनके बारे में मैंने जब ज़्यादा सोचा. And then when I researched the instruments themselves, their histories, their cruelty and the way they were used in medieval times, that's when I realized कि यहाँ तो एक किताब है. There is something.
Which is the most scariest one?
It is, it's one called The Judas Cradle.
Okay.
It is actually my favorite story. It's, I think, the 3rd or the 4th story in the book. And बताऊँ आपको?
हाँ, please.
So the Judas Cradle is an instrument which is shaped like a triangle. And ऊपर spike है. And उसके ऊपर आदमी को बिठाया जाता है. And he is, so his anus is on that, and he's lowered down onto it. So
I guess I've seen this in a movie or maybe read it somewhere.
But can you believe it was really used? I mean, this is real. So the Judas Cradle actually speaks about a young boy called Henry and a priest, novitiate, जो नए priest नहीं होते हैं वो, लेकिन seminary school में जो
जो पढ़ाई जाता है
to become a priest. It's their love story. His name is Brother Jose. It is their love story, and
it's a homosexual love story around that time.
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, it is basically, and Henry is underage.
Okay.
And even Brother Jose is underage.
Okay.
So it is their love story, and it's called the Judas Cradle with the references sexually to, as you can imagine, sodomy. So there is that. So that's actually my favorite story.
Okay.
I'll tell you, my favorite stories are the ones that when I write them, before I write them, I know the character possibly is thinking at that time because I'm thinking it with them, but it hurts. तो जब मैं उसको लिख देती हूँ तब I literally I will cry because I will feel like I wish I could have helped in some way. I've written your destiny to be this way, but I wish it could have been different for you.
True. As a writer, do you get involved in a character? I asked this to a lot of fiction writers specifically because you put your brain out to a character. You live with that character.
Absolutely.
Is it very triggering for you as well to imagine the pain, to imagine the tortures which the character is going through?
Yeah, it is. It's a strange combination of triggering and catharsis. Because कोई भी हमको जब mental या physical difficulty होती है, I think the best way you can figure it out and work through it is to talk about it or to write about it. So in a way it helps me process a lot of my unprocessed pain and trauma from the past. Not that I can ever say that I would know what my characters have been through in real life, but having been in situations which are very similar to these, I've known people who have been in situations like the ones I've mentioned in my book. For example, I did know somebody like the protagonist of one of my books from the Iron Maiden. It's about a man with gynomastia. Man boobs. जो कहते हैं. So I knew somebody like that. I knew the effect it had on their life. And I know about the trauma they went through, and you knew about the psychotic break it caused them. So a lot of these are actually written, I would like to think, not co-opting the other person's experience, but understanding where they come from, and therefore being able to feel just to a degree what they might have gone through. So to answer your question, they are both triggering as well as cathartic. It's a strange mix.
When you write for somebody, क्या जाता है कि किसको पढ़ना चाहिए? What kind of impact will it? What kind of positive impact will it bring to a reader? And who's, I shouldn't say use this term, but just for the lack of better words, who's the target reader? Target
reader is anybody, I think, who, I wouldn't say over 18, I would say maybe over 16, because it's mature content. So over 16, I mean right now what they play on video games and stuff is far worse than the things they read here.
True.
So anybody who has a mature enough head on their shoulders to grasp a little bit, and I think it's a great read for everybody, because it's not something you want to read, but it's something you should read. You should know about these things, or you should at least have a little bit of empathy.
And this has been a part of history. So certainly consider it as a history which is like a fictional history.
Absolutely.
Making it relevant for the today's time to know what exactly happened around that time.
Absolutely.
What kind of stories did we have. I guess it also has a lot of reality to it. These stories, these characters may not be real in life, but they were real in time some time back, right?
Yeah. And not just that, it is before each story there is a footnote that explains exactly what the instrument of torture used to do in medieval times. And then it goes into the story. So basically when you're going into it, you already have the mental picture of the instrument in your head. So then you're able to draw the parallel to the story that is being told. So so that should help. And I think, to say positive impact and all makes me sound very pompous. I'm not expecting कि किसी को positive impact होगा, but I just hope कि लोगों को थोड़ा तो समझ में आए कि हाँ ऐसा भी होता है, and जब होता है इस चीज के लिए आपको if nothing just be non-judgmental about it.
True.
That's all.
True. In the 21st century, when everybody has their own voice, everybody is experimenting. You see these n number of videos where people have done researches. A lot of people are into BDSM. So
Yeah.
agreed, we should not have those lenses of
Absolutely.
to judgment somebody. Acha, when we talk about the research part, what kind of research apart from the history did you speak to people who are around you, or you went
I
to
did.
somebody?
Yeah.
क्या था मतलब? What is the process of research?
So sorry, just to get back to it, so there is no BDSM in the book.
Yeah,
there
which
are
is fine.
fetishes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did. The thing is, I think as an author, we're very used to being like sponges. यानी कि these are all somewhere. These are stories where that I know most of the people.
Great.
And they're fictionalized, but I know कि ये कहानी का जो इंसेप्शन है वो उस मेरी जिंदगी के उस कैरेक्टर से हुआ है. So to that extent, I think the research that I did was mostly on the instruments of torture themselves, because I wanted to know how, whether they really have been used. Like one of them is the chastity belt, which is again कहते हैं कि होता था, लेकिन as such historical canons में लिखा नहीं है.
What is chastity belt? I have
So the chastity belt is something that used to be put on wives or girlfriends, mostly wives, when जैसे crusades पे चले जाते थे या wars fight करने चले जाते थे, तो these knights and all these men used to put a belt around the privates of
the
woman
vagina.
to maintain her chastity, to make sure that she was not able to sleep with other people. So that enforced chastity, which yes, exactly, was one of those, yeah. So although there is most of these instruments have recorded instances where they have been used in history, and to terrible effect. So, but the chastity belt was a very interesting one for me to explore, just because it's one of those things you read about a lot in literature. Chastity belt is written about all the time in literature. It is written about in all sorts of genres as well. But it doesn't have any historical record of it existing. So I wanted to actually place it in the feminist perspective of expecting a woman to keep her legs closed, and why should that expectation be there. True. So the enforced chastity belt by outside people and a woman who would reject it.
कितना टाइम लगा बुक को लिखने में?
तो ये तो बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चन है. Everybody asks me how long does the book take to write. Any book takes a few weeks to write. Okay. It takes years in your head, and it takes years to edit.
True.
So पहले तो लिख दिया in a couple of weeks.
अच्छा.
Then हाँ.
Very cool यार. मतलब इतने सारे authors से मैं बात करता हूँ, 2-3 हफ्ते में नहीं लिख पाते लोग मतलब.
But I stay awake at night. I don't eat. I don't do anything because I'm like in a different.
Or
my children cannot approach me. I'm like stay back. You know.
ठीक है, makes sense.
It's like that. It's almost like workshopping it. But then I step away from it. Then the editing starts. And then that takes about 2 years.
And अच्छा, like this is 150 pages around
200 pages.
200 pages.
Yeah.
जब आप लिखते हो मतलब एज अ ऑथर एज अ राइटर मैं पूछ रहा हूँ, बिकॉज ये मैंने एक्चुअली आज तक किसी से नहीं पूछा कि पहले आप कितना लिखते हो, मतलब जो फर्स्ट ड्राफ्ट होता है, हाउ बिग इज द फर्स्ट ड्राफ्ट? इज इट लाइक
It's very messy. It's horrible.
And you write like with pens?
No,
type na?
No.
Type na?
I type.
A lot of people actually write it with
I
pens.
know. I think मुझसे थोड़ा older generation probably still writes, and I'm like I can't handle it.
अब तो मतलब जिसका जो भी whatever floats the boat, I guess everybody has that. जैसी आपकी श्रद्धा हो, लिख लो वही बहुत है. A lot of people do like dictaphones में बहुत लोग use करते हैं.
No, that doesn't work for me.
ठीक है, whatever floats the boat. So you type.
I type, and there have been times that I have written like I've written like 30 pages, and I've just deleted the whole thing because I'll go back to it after.
मतलब you didn't even copy it?
No, because I mean this is utter rubbish. It should not exist in this world. And मैं बताऊँ, I have this intrinsic nausea for anything that I write. तो जैसे मैंने जब पहले जो poetry लिखती थी, अब मैं जो देखती हूँ, I'm like, what is this? What was I thinking when I wrote it? I hate myself. So I'm going to be at that stage with this.
But वो I guess हर इंसान के साथ नहीं होता. अगर आप अपने, for example, you may have texted your husband 6 months back. अगर आप वो chats अब पढ़ो, आपको खुद हंसी आएगी कि मैंने क्या लिखा था. How do I talk? That is not how I am. But we grow with weeks. We grow in weeks. बाप रे. So like for example, 700-800 पेजेस स्टार्टिंग में? नहीं
नहीं 700-800 पेजेस की क्षमता नहीं
है क्षमता.
I would say about I think there were about 10 or 12 stories, and then I whittled it down to the 8 which made it to the book.
Okay. What didn't make to the book? चलो इस
What didn't?
हाँ.
अरे बाप रे, वो तो बहुत ही गंदी कहानी है, मुझे याद तक नहीं है. I have a very bad memory, like a छन्नी. I just forget very fast.
Okay.
हाँ.
अच्छा, जब आपने मुझे 3 इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स की बात की, और क्या है मतलब अपार्ट फ्रॉम एक्सट्रीम वायलेंस जो which you mentioned, apart from you were mentioning about fetishes, we haven't spoken about that. What kind of fetishes do we see inside?
अब आप कह रहे हैं extreme violence, so this is not like Game of Thrones violence.
हाँ वो सब नहीं होगा.
But yes, extreme psychological violence in the sense that the worst a human being can probably do to another human being mentally or emotionally. Other things that I've written about, I've also written about some very playful and teasing things.
Okay.
For example, जब fetish की बात करें, I'm talking about an exhibitionist. So a person who enjoys, the sexual act, but they enjoy doing it in front of other people, or they are okay with doing that, and their relationship with a peeping tom, who likes to look into other people's houses.
Oh.
Right. So that is one of the.
But that was also instrument of torture.
I've correlated it to the chastity belt, because the girl who's an exhibitionist, the woman who's an exhibitionist, is actually, she does it because she doesn't believe in enforced chastity.
Okay.
And she comes across this man who falls in love with her and who wants to be her peeping tom, wants to be the person, her voyeur as it were, to see into the act when she is with other lovers and other partners. So that is one of the interesting, slightly more filmy stories actually of the book.
True.
Then there are interesting ones. There's one about a young lady who gets a divorce, and she's one of those grows up a beauty queen. तो यानी कि जो जिनके पेरेंट्स उनको पहले से ही ले जाते हैं ना, आधार कॉलोनी, बी प्रिंसेस, यंग प्रिंसेस, स्माइल, वो. So she's got that whole thing. She's only brought up to look at her physicality and how what she goes through when she finds out that her husband has left her for a plain looking woman. So her beauty, so she crashes because she's always this beautifully dressed, spick and span, and the high heels, always in these high heels and everything, and how she crashes. Another story which actually is taken from somebody I knew very, very closely was that there are 2 brothers, one of whom has a degenerative muscular disease, and the other is very fit and healthy. तो उनका जो dynamic है, I won't tell you more about that.
Yeah, ठीक है. Yeah. That's for the readers to read, I guess.
Yeah. The gynomastia one is also very interesting because we see a different take on sexual abuse in that book, and how that abuse leads to the person's mental and mind map in the future becomes very clear in that story.
Hey, when I was reading about instruments of torture from the historical context, I've always read one thing कि जिसके साथ ये torture हो रहा था उसके लिए तो obviously एक बहुत बड़ा pain है, but it was done to give out a message to the society कि ये कभी नहीं करना है, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
That happens, right?
Yeah. So it was more used as an instrument of what's the word I'm looking for, to squash, किसी को oppress करने के लिए. So more than instruments of torture, they were instruments of oppression. They were instruments of like they were made to make people toe the line. And in the same way in these stories as well, psychologically, how it is taboo, and how most people who are around the people experiencing this say that नहीं ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए. तो for example, वो voyeur की mother is like नहीं ये सब नहीं, you have to get married to a good Indian girl, and things like that. So in that sense, the instruments of torture affect much more than the person who's just being tortured. It is,
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess इस question के लिए जो मैं अगला पूछने वाला हूँ वो बहुत जल्दी time होगा, but what's next? What are you writing next?
That's the most interesting part actually for me, is I am now writing a full-length book.
Okay.
It is I would call it, so it is again cross genre जो बोलते हैं.
Okay.
So it is feminist fiction.
Okay.
It has a hint of the paranormal.
Okay.
And I would say it is also a bit of a thriller.
Okay.
And it is based in the town that I grew up in.
Which is?
Fictional. I grew up in Nagpur.
Oh.
हाँ जी.
Sauji, बहुत. Are you a vegetarian by any chance?
No, I eat anything that moves, but Sauji. Have you ever tried Sauji cuisine?
I have tried. Honestly, a lot of people who may be watching from Nagpur, they'll say कि यार ये क्या बोल दिया. I didn't enjoy it that much, honestly.
Yeah.
I like it. मैं ऐसा नहीं बोलूँगा मतलब even I am a non-veg lover.
Yeah, but growing up, my friends would go for Sauji once a week at least.
Okay.
And I used to call that Azhar time. Because it was like when I went with them, I would just sit in the corner while they ate because baapre.
It
is very spicy.
I am born and raised in a town pretty close to Nagpur, Jabalpur.
Really? Jabalpur, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So
that's my love, like that's my first love.
But you don't have Sauji, no, in Jabalpur?
No.
You escaped.
I've went to Nagpur a couple of times. One or times.
I've been to Jabalpur. I've been to the marble cliffs. Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
They're beautiful. Have you done the boating and all?
I think we went in a small boat at one point, but I was a kid, so I don't really remember too much.
I guess we'll wait for the second book as well.
Yeah. So the second book is something that I'm very excited about because it's going to be my full novel length book.
Okay.
So it's already in first draft.
Okay.
And hopefully maybe next
अब तो time
year,
लगेगा
2
हाँ
years.
मतलब 2 years नहीं next year तक का रखते हैं target बढ़िया होगा.
चलिए.
Again, I'll see you for this podcast and we'll be again happy to host you.
Thank you
it
so
was
much.
Amazing to have this conversation with you.
So much.
What's your message to all those people who are watching this podcast?
Guys, please buy my book. I can't even afford a cup of coffee. You have to buy a book for a struggling author.
I guess that's it for this episode. Thank you very much and thank you Aparna for talking to us.
Thank you so much, Abel. Bye-bye.